The meeting room on station Kepler 442 was built to impress. Crystal walls curved upward into a dome that showed the stars beyond. Delegates from 40 different species sat in specialized chairs designed for their unique bodies. Some breathed methane, others needed water tanks. A few existed as energy patterns contained in magnetic fields. The Galactic Council had spent 3,000 years perfecting the art of bringing different life forms together in peace. Captain Jake Morrison sat in a chair made for humans and tried not to fidget. He was a tall man with dark hair going gray at the temples and the kind of weathered face that came from 20 years in space. Next to him sat his crew from the Earth vessel Odyssey. Pilot Linda Hayes kept checking her datapad. Engineer Danny Rodriguez drummed his fingers on the table until Jake gave him a look. Security Chief Greg Palmer sat perfectly still, which somehow made him more intimidating. Dr. Amy Chen scribbled notes on actual paper because she said it helped her think. Ambassador Zixthar floated at the head of the table. The Voluvian looked like a jellyfish made of purple light, with tentacles that shifted and moved as he spoke. His voice came through a translator box that made him sound vaguely British. He had been assigned to evaluate whether humanity was ready to join the Galactic Council. So far, the evaluation was not going well. Let me ensure I understand correctly, Zixthar said, his tentacles coiling with what might have been concern. Your species requires only 6 to 8 hours of unconsciousness per rotation? Sleep, yes, Jake said, though plenty of people get by on less. I knew a cargo hauler who ran on 4 hours for months. Several delegates made sounds of distress. The translator struggled to convey the exact emotion, but it landed somewhere between horror and disbelief. And this person survived? Asked Council Member Thrin, who looked like a boulder with eyes. Sure, Jake said. Retired with full pension last year. Took up woodworking. Zixthar's color shifted to a darker purple. Captain Morrison, my species requires 16 hours of rest. The Thrint need 20. 4 hours of sleep would kill most council members within a week. Huh, Danny said. That must make deadlines difficult. The engineer's comment was met with confused silence. Linda elbowed him in the ribs. Zixthar moved to the next item on his list. Your nutritional requirements show you consume between 2,000 and 3,000 calories per day. Is this a translation error? Sounds right, Amy said, looking up from her notes. More if you're active. Athletes can hit 5,000 or 6,000. Per day? Thrin's rocky surface cracked with what might have been a frown. I consume 800 calories per week. How do you function? Amy asked, genuinely curious. She pulled out her datapad and started taking medical notes. How do you not explode? Thrin countered. The questions continued. Each answer seemed to disturb the council more. Yes, humans could survive in temperatures that would freeze or boil other species. Yes, they healed from injuries that would be fatal to most council members. Yes, they had something called an immune system that was constantly fighting microscopic battles inside their bodies. Let me address the psychological profile, Zixthar said. His tentacles were now a deep indigo, which Jake's briefing materials said meant stress. Your species experiences something called emotions at an intensity we find concerning. You have wars. You have violence. You have what you call extreme sports where death is a known risk. We're working on the war thing, Jake said. Been 30 years since the last major conflict. And extreme sports are just for fun. Nobody has to do them. People do them voluntarily. A delegate who looked like a floating cluster of crystals chimed a note of confusion. For enjoyment? Sure, Greg said. He spoke for the first time, his deep voice carrying across the room. I used to do something called cave diving. You swim through underwater caves in the dark. Why? Asked at least 5 delegates at once. Greg shrugged. It was there. Zixthar pulled up a video file. We intercepted some of your entertainment broadcasts. This is a sporting event you call football? The video showed a game from last year's championship. 2 teams of large humans crashed into each other repeatedly while chasing a ball. The hits looked brutal. One player got knocked down hard, stayed down for a moment, then got up and kept playing. That man was just injured, Thrin said. Why does he continue? Probably wasn't that bad, Danny said. Maybe a bruise. You walk those off. Walk off a collision that would shatter my mineral structure? Well, you're made of rock. We're made of meat. Different rules. The crystal delegate chimed in horror. You classify your own bodies as meat? I mean, technically, Amy said. Muscle tissue, organs, bone, nervous system. It's carbon-based biology. Sixthar closed the video. Let me be direct. By council standards, your species appears unstable. You operate in conditions we consider extreme. You perform activities we classify as suicidal. You consume substances that are toxins to most life forms. Like what? Linda asked. Your briefing materials mention something called coffee, a chemical stimulant you ingest daily? Oh yeah, Jake said. Can't start the day without it. You want some? I brought a thermos. He reached for his bag. Half the delegates recoiled. That substance is banned on 70 council worlds, Zixthar said. It causes cardiac arrest in most species. Really? Jake looked at his thermos sadly and put it away. That's a shame. It's really good coffee, too. Amy leaned forward. Ambassador, I think there might be a fundamental misunderstanding here. Humans aren't trying to be extreme. This is just how we live. Our baseline normal is different from yours. That's the problem, Dr. Chen, Zixthar said. Your normal is our emergency crisis level. We're not certain how to integrate a species that operates at such intensity. We're not that intense, Danny protested. We're pretty relaxed, actually. Thrin made a grinding sound. You consider yourselves relaxed? Sure, Danny said. I work maybe 50 hours a week. Got hobbies. Go hiking on weekends. Pretty standard stuff. 50 hours of labor per week? The crystal delegate's chime went up several octaves. I work 15. That's considered strenuous. What do you do the rest of the time? Linda asked. Rest, meditate, exist peacefully. Sounds boring, Linda said, then caught herself. No offense. This is exactly the concern, Zixthar said. His color had gone almost black now. Your species finds peace boring. You seek stimulation constantly. You push boundaries as a recreational activity. The Council operates on principles of measured restraint and careful resource management. Humanity appears to operate on principles of excess. Jake drummed his fingers on the table, thinking, Look, I get it. We're different. But different doesn't mean dangerous. We've been in space for 80 years now and haven't blown anything up that didn't need blowing up. We follow rules. We cooperate with neighbors. We just do it all a bit faster than you're used to. A bit faster? Zixthar pulled up more data. Your ships travel at speeds we reserve for emergencies. Your construction timelines would require 3 shifts of workers among my people. You built this vessel in 2 years. Council ships require a decade minimum. Quality takes time, Thrin added. The Odyssey is quality, Danny said defensively. I built half her systems myself. She'll run for 50 years easy. You built a starship in 2 years and expect it to last 50? Zixthar's tentacles nodded. The math doesn't support this. Sure it does, Danny said. You just have to know what you're doing. The meeting continued for another hour. Every topic brought new concerns. Human reproduction rates were too fast. Human population density was too high. Human cities were too loud. Human entertainment was too violent. Human food was too spicy. The list went on. Finally, Zixthar called for a recess. The council needed to deliberate. Jake and his crew were escorted to a waiting room with comfortable chairs and a viewing screen showing the station's exterior. Well, Linda said, that went badly. They're scared of us, Greg observed. Not threat scared. Wrong scared. Like we don't fit their model. We don't, Amy said. She was still taking notes. Their entire civilization is built on low intensity, long duration living. We're high intensity, medium duration. It's not compatible with their worldview. So what do? Danny asked. Jake walked to the viewing screen and watched stars drift by. We wait, let them think. Maybe they'll see past the differences. And if they don't? Linda asked. Then we go home and keep doing what we're doing. Humanity doesn't need the council's approval to exist. They waited for 3 hours. Jake drank coffee from his thermos, not caring about council rules in a private room. Danny played games on his datapad. Linda reviewed flight plans. Greg meditated in the corner. Amy wrote up her observations of council biology. Then alarms started blaring. Red lights flashed throughout the station. The viewing screen changed to show an emergency broadcast. A mechanical voice spoke through the translator in every language simultaneously. Distress signal received. Mining colony Curvath 7, systems failure. Civilians trapped. Immediate assistance required. Jake stood up. Where's Curvath 7? Linda checked her datapad. 4 light years from here. Mining operation, population around 200. The door opened. Zixthar floated in, his color now a pale washed out. The Odyssey screamed through space at speeds that made the navigation computer throw warning messages every 30 seconds. Danny had silenced the alarms after the first 100. Now he just watched the temperature gauges and muttered prayers to whatever gods protected engineers who pushed their luck. Reactor at 148%, he called from engineering, holding steady mostly. Define mostly, Linda said from the pilot seat. Her hands moved across the controls with practiced precision, making tiny adjustments to keep them on course. The kind of mostly where we probably won't explode. That's reassuring, Jake said from the captain's chair. He was reading through the emergency broadcast data on his screen. What do we know about Curvath 7? Amy pulled up the information on the medical station. Mining colony. Established 15 years ago. Primary exports are rare minerals used in ship construction. Population of 212 registered workers. Mix of species, mostly council members who can handle the low gravity. What went wrong? Greg asked. He was checking equipment in the armory section, making sure every piece of rescue gear was ready. Looks like an AI malfunction, Jake said. The automated defense system went into lockdown mode, sealed all the underground sections. Then the cooling systems failed. Radiation from the mining equipment is building up. How bad? Amy asked. Bad enough. If they stay down there longer than 36 hours, the exposure will kill them. And the tunnel structure is collapsing. Some sections have already caved in. Linda checked her navigation. We're 6 hours out now. Pushed past the safe threshold about an hour ago, but we're making good time. Council ship? Jake asked. Long-range sensors show Commander Thelnos' response team is 4 hours behind us. They're traveling at standard emergency speeds, which means they'll arrive about 2 hours after we do. The ship shuddered. Warning lights flashed across Danny's console. Just a power fluctuation, Danny said quickly. She's holding together. The Odyssey is a tough ship. She's a good ship, Jake corrected, because you built her right. Damn right I did. They flew in silence for a while. Greg came up from the armory with a report. We've got 6 environmental suits rated for radiation. Portable scanners, cutting tools, medical supplies, standard rescue kit. Air supply? Jake asked. 8 hours pursuit at normal activity levels. 4 hours if we're working hard. We'll be working hard, Amy said. I want everyone taking anti-radiation meds before we go down. It won't stop exposure completely, but it'll help. Jake pulled up the schematics of the mining facility. The station computer had pulled them from the colony's public database. 3 main tunnel networks. The broadcast said all 3 are sealed. We'll need to cut through or override the lockdown. I can override it if I can get to the main control center, Danny said through the comm. Problem is, the control center is in Section B, which is one of the collapsed areas. So we cut through, Greg said. How thick are the doors? Standard council security doors, reinforced titanium alloy about 8 inches thick. Greg pulled out his data pad and did some calculations. I can cut through that in 40 minutes with the plasma torch, maybe 30 if we push it. Push it, Jake said. Linda's console beeped. Coming up on Curvath 7, dropping out of faster than light in 3 minutes. Jake stood up and headed toward the equipment bay. Everyone suit up. We dock, we move, we get those people out. Questions? Rules of engagement if something goes wrong? Greg asked. It was the kind of question a security chief had to ask. Don't die. Don't let anyone else die. Everything else is negotiable. Works for me. The Odyssey dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a lurch that made the hull groan. Through the viewing screens, Curvath 7 appeared. It was a small planet, mostly rock and ice. The mining facility was built into a canyon system near the equator. Smoke rose from several sections. That's not good, Linda said. She brought them into orbit and scanned the surface. Fires in sections A and C. Section B shows structural collapse across 40% of the tunnel network. And I'm reading high radiation levels throughout. Life signs? Amy asked. 206, down 6 from the original count. Linda's voice was tight. Looks like the initial collapse caught some people. Jake felt the familiar weight settle in his chest. 6 people already dead, 206 still alive, still counting on someone to save them, Find us a landing spot as close to the main entrance as possible, he said. Linda brought the Odyssey down through atmosphere that buffeted the ship with winds. The mining facility had been built in a canyon to protect it from the surface storms, but that same canyon made for tricky flying. She threaded the ship between rock walls with maybe 50 feet of clearance on either side. Showing off? Danny asked over the comm. Little bit, Linda admitted. They touched down on a landing pad that was built for smaller ships. The Odyssey's landing gear hung over the edges, but it would hold. Everyone out, Jake ordered. Danny, stay with the ship. Keep the engines warm. If this place collapses completely, we'll need to leave fast. Understood. Jake, Linda, Greg, and Amy suited up in the environmental suits. They were bulky things, painted bright orange for visibility, with thick radiation shielding and built-in air supplies. Amy handed out the anti-radiation medications. Everyone swallowed them dry. The airlock cycled open. The air outside was thin and cold. Their suit computers registered the temperature at minus 40 degrees Celsius. Radiation detectors immediately started clicking. Background radiation is already at warning levels, Amy said. We need to work fast. They crossed the landing pad to the facility entrance. The main doors were sealed shut. Greg pulled out the plasma torch and fired it up. The cutting tool glowed white-hot as it bit into the titanium alloy. 30 minutes, Greg said. Maybe 25. Make it 20, Jake said. While Greg cut, Amy scanned the building with her medical equipment. I'm picking up life signs on the other side of this door. Looks like some people made it to the entrance area but got trapped when the doors sealed. How many? 12, maybe 15. The radiation is interfering with the scanners. The plasma torch screamed as it carved through metal. Greg worked with steady precision, cutting a rough doorway large enough for them to fit through in their bulky suits. Molten metal dripped onto the ground and cooled instantly in the cold air. Done, Greg said. He kicked the cut section. It fell inward with a crash. They stepped through into darkness. Emergency lights flickered weakly. The facility's power was failing. Hello? Jake called out. This is a rescue team from Earth. Anyone here? Movement in the shadows. A figure stumbled forward. It was a thrint, the rock-like species. This one's surface was cracked and damaged. Humans? The thrint's voice came, through a translator similar to the ones on the council station. You came? We came, Jake said. How many are with you? 14. 3 are injured badly. The rest are weak from radiation exposure. Amy was already moving forward with her medical kit. Let me see them. The thrint led them deeper into the entrance area. 14 aliens huddled in what had been a reception area. They were a mix of species. Most looked scared. Some looked sick. 3 were lying down, unconscious or dying. Amy went to work immediately. She had brought human medical equipment, but she knew enough about council biology to help. She started with the worst cases, checking vital signs and administering what medicine she had that would work across species. These 3 need immediate evacuation, she said. They won't survive another hour in these radiation levels. Linda, get them to the ship, Jake ordered. Greg and I will push deeper. We need to get to that control center and unlock the other sections. Linda and Greg carefully lifted the 3 unconscious aliens. Even in the low gravity, it was hard work in the environmental suits. They headed back toward the entrance. Jake turned to the thrint. What's your name? Keln. Keln, I'm Captain Jake Morrison. Can you show me how to get to Section B? The tunnels are collapsed. You can't get through. We'll cut through if we have to. Can you show me? Keln hesitated, then nodded. His rocky surface scraped against itself in what might have been determination. Follow me. They went deeper into the facility. The corridors were dark except for their suit lights. Smoke hung in the air. The walls were cracked. Jake's radiation detector was clicking faster now. How long can you survive in this? Keln asked. Few hours, Jake said. How long can you? I already exceed safe exposure by 30%, but I'm made of mineral. I'm more resistant than others. They reached a collapsed section. Tons of rock and metal blocked the corridor. Jake examined it with his suit lights. There was no way through, not without heavy equipment they didn't have. "Is there another way?" he asked. "Service tunnels. They're narrow, built for maintenance drones, not people." "How narrow?" "Very narrow." Jake looked at his environmental suit. It was bulky, but he'd been in tight spaces before. "Show me." Keln led him to a side passage. There was a small hatch in the wall, maybe 3 feet square. Behind it was a tunnel that looked barely wide enough for Jake's suit. "You can't fit," Keln said. "Watch me." Jake opened the hatch and squeezed into the service tunnel. It was a tight fit. He had to crawl on his stomach, pulling himself forward with his. The medical station at Rigel 3 was not prepared for the Odyssey. The station was built to handle maybe 20 patients at a time, usually for routine procedures or minor injuries. When a human ship arrived with nearly 200 radiation-exposed refugees, 3 critical patients, and a crew that was also overexposed, the station commander panicked. His name was Veltrin, and he was a Zellan, a species that looked like walking mantises with delicate blue skin. He met Jake and Amy at the docking port with what looked like every medical staff member on the station. "Captain Morrison," Veltrin said, his translator making his clicks and chirps into rapid speech. "We received your distress call. But this is far beyond our capacity. We have 12 medical staff and 30 beds. You're bringing us nearly 200 patients. Actually, most of them just need decontamination and monitoring," Amy said. She was still in her environmental suit, though she'd removed the helmet. Her hair was plastered to her head with sweat. "The real critical cases are 3. Another 40 need serious medical attention. The rest are walking wounded. Still, we don't have the facilities." "Then we'll make do with what you have," Amy said. She didn't wait for permission. She started directing refugees off the ship, organizing them by medical priority. Critical cases first, serious exposure second. Everyone else can wait in the docking bay for now. Jake watched his doctor take over the medical station like a general organizing troops. She had that effect. 2 years ago, Amy had been the head of emergency medicine at a hospital in Chicago. She dealt with everything from car crashes to building collapses. A radiation exposure incident with 200 patients was bad, but it was something she could handle. Veltrin watched with what might have been awe as Amy converted the docking bay into a triage center. She had Linda and Greg helping, both of them following her orders without question. "Your doctor is very commanding," Veltrin observed. "She's very good," Jake corrected. "And she's seen worse." "Worse than this?" "She used to work in an emergency room. She told me once she handled 43 gunshot wounds in a single night. This is organized by comparison." Veltrin's antenna twitched. 43? In one night? From what war? Not a war, just a bad weekend in the city. The Zellan was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I'm beginning to understand what Ambassador Zixthar meant in his reports." Over the next 6 hours, Amy and the medical station staff worked to stabilize and treat the refugees. The 3 critical patients were placed in intensive care units. Amy had to adapt human medical procedures to alien biology, but she managed. She was the kind of doctor who improvised well under pressure. The 40 serious cases were spread across the available beds. The rest of the refugees were decontaminated, given anti-radiation medications and told to rest in the docking bay where Danny had set up temporary bunks using cargo netting and spare blankets. Jake spent the time making sure everyone was fed. The station's food synthesizers were working overtime, producing meals compatible with different species' biology. It wasn't great food, but it was hot and nutritious. Around hour 7, Veltrin found Jake in the docking bay. The captain was helping distribute food to a group of refugees who looked like otters made of silver fur. "Captain Morrison," Veltrin said, "you should know that you and your crew need treatment as well. Your radiation exposure levels are dangerous." "We'll get treatment after everyone else is stable," Jake said. "That could be days. Then it'll be days." Veltrin's antennae twitched again. "Captain, you're exhibiting symptoms of radiation poisoning. You're shaking. You're pale. Your crew is the same. You need medical attention now." Jake looked at his hands. They were shaking slightly. He'd been so focused on the refugees that he hadn't noticed. "Fine, but Amy stays on duty. She's the only doctor who knows how to treat both humans and council species at the same time. She's also radiation poisoned." She'll live. She's tough. As if summoned by the conversation, Amy appeared. She looked exhausted. There were dark circles under her eyes. But she was still moving with purpose. Captain, I need you and the crew in examination room 3 now. Amy, you need rest. So do you. Room 3, move. Jake knew better than to argue with Amy when she used that tone. He gathered Linda, Greg, and Danny, and they all trudged to examination room 3. Amy scanned each of them with a medical tricorder, making notes on her datapad. Okay, she said. You're all idiots. Captain, you have acute radiation syndrome. Greg, you're not far behind. Linda, Danny, you're both in better shape but still well over safe limits. Will we live? Danny asked. Yes, but you're going to feel terrible for a few days. Maybe weeks. I'm starting you all on intensive radiation therapy. You'll need daily treatments for at least 2 weeks. What about you? Linda asked. Amy hesitated. I'm at about the same levels as the captain. So you're also an idiot, Greg said with a slight smile. Professional idiot, Amy corrected. I have a medical degree in idiocy. Despite the exhaustion and radiation poisoning, they all laughed. The next morning, Jake woke up feeling like he'd been hit by a truck. Every muscle ached. His stomach was in knots. His head pounded. This was what radiation poisoning felt like. He forced himself out of bed and made his way to the command deck. Commander Thelnos had arrived with the council response team. He wanted to speak with Jake. They met in a conference room on the medical station. Thelnos sat in a chair designed for his species. Ambassador Zixthar was there too, floating in one corner. Several other council members attended via hologram. Captain Morrison, Thelnos began. I've filed my report on the Kurvath 7 incident. The council would like to understand what happened. We rescued some people, Jake said. His voice was hoarse. Not sure what else there is to understand. Let me rephrase, Thelnos said. The council would like to understand how you rescued those people. We've reviewed the timeline. You arrived at Kurvath 7, entered a radiation-contaminated facility with collapsing structures, navigated through service tunnels barely large enough for your equipment, overrode a malfunctioning AI system, and evacuated 194 civilians in 3 hours. Sounds about right. Captain, our projected timeline for the same operation was 52 hours. You completed it in 3. That's not just efficient, that's impossible by council standards. Jake leaned back in his chair. He was too tired to be diplomatic. Commander, you want to know the difference between how we did it and how you would have done it? Please. You would have done it carefully. Proper safety protocols, risk assessments, equipment checks, making sure everything was perfect before you acted. We didn't have time for perfect. Those people were dying, so we did what needed doing and figured out the details on the way. Zixthar floated forward. Captain, you operated equipment at 150% capacity. You exposed yourself to lethal radiation levels. Your pilot performed maneuvers that council safety regulations classify as suicidal. How is this responsible behavior? Because 200 people are alive who wouldn't be. At what cost? Zixthar's tentacles coiled. You could have died. Your entire crew could have died. But we didn't, Greg said. He'd entered the room quietly and now stood behind Jake. Sorry to interrupt, but I was listening. And I think you're missing the point. Which is? Thelnos asked. You're judging us by your standards. Your species can't survive high radiation. You can't push your equipment past safe limits. You can't take risks like we do. But that's you, not us. What you call lethal radiation, we call uncomfortable. What you call suicidal maneuvers, our pilots call Tuesday. Linda had entered too, along with Danny and Amy. The whole crew was there now, standing behind their captain. You keep saying we exceeded safe limits, Linda said. But whose limits? Yours or ours? Because by human standards, we were well within acceptable parameters for emergency operations. You call 300% radiation exposure acceptable? Zixthar asked. I call it survivable with proper medical treatment, Amy said, which we're all receiving. We knew the risks. We accepted them. We did the job. Danny stepped forward. Look, I get it. You build things to last forever. You test everything 100 times. You never push past recommended specifications. That's fine for you. But humans don't work that way. We build things strong enough to do the job, and then we push them to see what they can really do. The Odyssey can handle 150% capacity. I know because I tested it, not in a simulation. In real space. That's how we learn what our limits actually are. Thelnos looked at each of them. You realize you're describing what most species would call recklessness. We call it effective, Jake said. Commander, let me ask you something. If you'd followed your 52-hour timeline, how many of those people would have survived? Thelnos was quiet for a moment. Then he said, approximately 70%. The other 30% would have died from radiation exposure before we completed the extraction. So about 60 people would have died. That would be the projected casualty rate. Yes. And you'd accept that? It would be unfortunate, but risk is inherent in rescue operations. Jake stood up. It made his head spin, but he needed to stand for this. Commander, humans don't accept casualties when we can prevent them. Station Kepler 442 was burning when the Odyssey arrived. Through the viewing screens, Jake could see sections of the massive diplomatic station, venting atmosphere into space. Debris floated in orbit. Small fires flickered in the vacuum where oxygen still leaked from damaged sections. And surrounding the station were 6 warships that Jake didn't recognize. Those are Vrexen vessels, Greg said, pulling up data on the tactical display. Raider class. Fast, heavily armed, designed for hit-and-run attacks. Vrexen, Danny muttered from engineering. Great, I've read about them. They're not supposed to attack council stations. Well, nobody told them that, Linda said. She was scanning the tactical situation. Looks like they hit hard and fast. Took out the station's primary defenses in the first strike. Now they're just sitting there, probably waiting for reinforcements or trying to break into the secure sections. Jake studied the display. The Vrexen ships were arranged in a defensive formation around the station. They clearly hadn't expected anyone to respond this quickly. Commander Thelnos' ship was still an hour behind, and other council response vessels were probably hours away. The Odyssey was alone against 6 warships with a cargo hold full of refugees and a crew that was still recovering from radiation poisoning. Opinions? Jake asked his crew. We're outgunned, Greg said bluntly. Those ships have more firepower than us. Better shields. Faster engines. But they're not expecting us, Linda added. They're in a loose formation. Overconfident. The station still has people inside, Amy said over the comm. She was monitoring the refugee situation from the medical bay. I'm picking up life signs. A lot of them. If those Vrexen break through to the secure sections, it'll be a massacre. Jake made his decision. Linda, take us in fast. Greg, weapons ready. Danny, I need everything you can give me from the engines and shields. We're still overloaded with refugees, Danny said. The ship isn't designed for combat in this condition. I know. Do it anyway. The Odyssey accelerated toward the station. On the tactical display, Jake watched the Vrexen ships react. They were surprised. One ship was moving to intercept. Incoming hail from the Vrexen, Linda said. Put it through. The viewing screen changed to show a Vrexen commander. The Vrexen looked like a cross between a lizard and a spider, with multiple eyes and a mouthful of sharp teeth. When he spoke, the translator made his hissing voice sound almost polite. Human vessel, you are interfering in Vrexen operations. Turn back or be destroyed. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship Odyssey. You're attacking a council diplomatic station. That's an act of war. Stand down and withdraw immediately. The Vrexen commander made a sound that might have been laughter. You're one ship with no military markings. You have no authority here. Last warning. Turn back. Jake looked at his crew. They looked back at him. No words needed. Negative, Jake said. You want this station, you'll have to go through us. He cut the connection. That was either very brave or very stupid, Greg observed. Little bit of both, Jake admitted. Battle stations. The Odyssey dove toward the station at speeds that made the hull groan. Linda's hands flew across the controls, making the ship dance through space in ways that shouldn't be possible for a vessel of her size. The first Vrexen ship opened fire. Energy beams lanced out, bright against the darkness of space. Linda rolled the Odyssey hard, and the beams missed by meters. They're not happy with us, Linda said calmly. Greg, return fire, Jake ordered. The Odyssey's weapons weren't designed for ship-to-ship combat. They were civilian-grade defensive weapons, meant to deal with pirates or debris, not military vessels. But Greg had spent years in security. He knew how to make the most of what they had. He targeted the Vrexen ship's weapons array and fired. The Odyssey's guns were less powerful than military-grade weapons, but Greg's aim was perfect. The shots hit the Vrexen ship's forward guns, disabling 2 of them. The Vrexen ship broke off, surprised that a civilian vessel had actually hit them. "Nice shooting," Jake said. "I'm just getting started," Greg replied. 2 more Vrexen ships were moving to intercept now. The Odyssey was outnumbered and outgunned. But Jake had one advantage. The Vrexen didn't expect a civilian ship to fight like a military vessel. "Linda, get us close to the station," Jake ordered. "Use it for cover." Linda dove toward the massive structure of Kepler 442. The station was huge, a city in space with hundreds of docking ports and miles of corridors. She flew the Odyssey through the narrow gaps between sections, using the station's bulk to block the Vrexen ship's firing angles. The Vrexen followed, but they were more cautious. They didn't want to damage the station too much because they clearly wanted to capture it intact. That hesitation was costing them. "Danny, how are the shields?" Jake asked. "Holding at 60%. But Captain, if they get a solid hit on us, we're done. We're not a warship." "Then we don't let them hit us." Linda was performing maneuvers that would make most pilots sick. She rolled the Odyssey through a debris field, using chunks of destroyed station components as cover. She flew between docking arms that were meant for ships half the Odyssey's size. She pushed the engines past safety limits and made turns that shouldn't be physically possible. In the engineering section, Danny was performing miracles. He was routing power from non-essential systems to shields and engines. He was overriding safety protocols. He was doing what the Council would call impossible, and what he called his job. "Got another one on our tail," Linda warned. "Shake him," Jake said. Linda dove toward the station's lower sections, then pulled up hard at the last second. The Odyssey skimmed along the station's hull with maybe 50 feet of clearance. The Vrexen ship following them didn't react fast enough. It clipped a docking arm and spiraled away, its engines smoking. "That's 2 down," Greg said. 4 to go. "Captain," Amy's voice came over the comm. She sounded strained. "The refugees are terrified. This ship wasn't designed for combat maneuvers. People are getting hurt from the G-forces." Jake felt his stomach drop. He'd been so focused on the battle that he'd forgotten about the nearly 200 refugees in the cargo hold. "Amy, secure them as best you can. This is going to get worse before it gets better." "Understood." The Odyssey emerged from behind the station to find 3 Vrexen ships waiting in formation. They opened fire simultaneously. Linda couldn't dodge them all. Energy beams hammered into the Odyssey's shields. Alarms blared. Sparks flew from control panels. "Shields down to 30%, Danny reported. His voice was tight. "One more hit like that and we're breached. Can you reinforce them?" Jake asked. "Already am. I'm pulling power from life support in the cargo bay." "That'll kill the refugees," Amy protested. "They've got 20 minutes of air. We'll all be dead in 2 if the shields fail." Jake hated that Danny was right. "Do it." The Odyssey's shields flickered, then strengthened. But now they were on borrowed time. 20 minutes to win this fight or everyone dies. "Greg, target their command ship," Jake ordered. "The big one in the center. If we take out their leader, maybe the others will retreat." "That ship has the heaviest shields," Greg said. "Our weapons can't penetrate them. Can you disable their shields?" Greg studied his tactical display. "Maybe if I can hit their shield generator. But it's a small target and it's heavily protected. You hit a weapons array on a moving ship. You can hit this." Greg smiled slightly. "Fair point." He took aim. The Odyssey was still dodging fire from 3 ships. Linda was flying evasive patterns that were keeping them alive but making it hard to line up a shot. Greg waited, patient, watching the tactical display for the right moment. Then he fired. The shot was perfect. It hit the Vrexen command ship's shield generator dead center. The generator exploded in a shower of sparks. The command ship's shields flickered and died. "Shields down," Greg confirmed. "They're vulnerable." "Hit them again," Jake ordered. Greg fired continuously. Without shields, the Vrexen command ship's hull armor couldn't stand up to sustained fire. Explosions rippled across the ship's surface. The vessel began to list, its engines failing. The other Vrexen ships hesitated. Their command ship was dying. They hadn't expected this level of resistance from a single civilian vessel. That hesitation was their downfall. Commander Thelnos' ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel right in the middle of the Vrexen formation. The Council warship was larger than the Vrexen vessels and heavily armed. It opened fire immediately. "About time," Danny muttered. The battle turned into a rout. The Vrexen ships were caught between the Odyssey and Thelnos' warship. 2 more Vrexin vessels were disabled in the first minute. The remaining ships broke formation and fled. "Should we pursue?" Linda asked. "Negative," Jake said. "Let them go. We need to help the station." The Odyssey limped toward Kepler 442's main docking port. The ship was damaged. Shields were down. Hull armor was scorched. But they were alive. As they docked, Jake finally allowed himself to breathe. His hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from radiation sickness. It was adrenaline. "Damage report," he called out. "Shields are shot," Danny said. "Hull breaches in sections 3 and 7. Engine coolant is leaking. We'll need a week in dock for repairs." "Casualties?" Jake asked, dreading the answer. 3 months had passed since the Vrexin attack on Station Kepler 442. The Odyssey had spent 2 weeks in dock getting repairs, then another week transferring the refugees to their homeworlds or new settlements. Then the paperwork started. Joining the Galactic Council meant forms. Mountains of forms, regulations to learn, protocols to memorize, cultural sensitivity training, legal frameworks, trade agreements, medical compatibility studies, environmental impact assessments. Jake had signed his name so many times that his hand cramped. But humanity was officially part of the Council now. Earth had a seat at the diplomatic table. Human ships were granted passage through Council space. Human colonies could trade freely with other species. It was everything humanity had worked toward for 80 years of space exploration, and Jake was bored out of his mind. "Another committee meeting," he muttered, looking at his schedule. "This one is about standardizing emergency broadcast frequencies across Council space." "Sounds thrilling," Linda said from the pilot seat. She was running system diagnostics, which was only slightly more interesting than committee meetings. The Odyssey was docked at Station Kepler 442 again. The station had been fully repaired and was busier than ever. With the Vrexin threat exposed, the Council was taking security more seriously. New defense platforms orbited the station. More warships patrolled nearby. And humans were being asked to help design the new security protocols. Apparently, fighting off 6 warships with a civilian vessel had impressed people. Greg appeared on the bridge carrying a datapad. "Captain, you're going to want to see this. We just got a message from Council High Command." "What kind of message?" Jake asked. "The classified kind." Jake took the datapad and read. His eyebrows went up. "They want us to train Council security forces in emergency response procedures." "Us?" Danny's voice came through the comm from engineering. "We're not military." "That's the point," Jake said, still reading. "They think civilian crews are better at improvising than military ones. They want to study how we operate under pressure." "So we're guinea pigs," Linda said. "More like teachers." Jake scrolled through the message. "They're offering to pay us a lot, and they'll waive some of the monitoring requirements if we agree." Amy walked onto the bridge with a medical report. "Speaking of monitoring, the Council observers are still confused by our medical practices. One of them watched me perform an appendectomy yesterday and filed a complaint about my speed. Apparently I work too fast." "How fast did you work?" Greg asked. 20 minutes for the full procedure. He said Council doctors take 3 hours and require 2 assistants. I did it alone in a third of the time, and he thinks I was being reckless. "Were you?" Jake asked with a slight smile. "Of course not. The patient is fine. Better than fine. He's already walking around." Amy sat down in the navigation station chair. "But that's the problem, isn't it? Everything we consider normal, they consider extreme." "That's not going to change," Jake said. "We are who we are. I know. But it's exhausting sometimes. Every decision gets questioned. Every action gets analyzed. I'm starting to understand why some humans don't want to join the Council. It's a lot of scrutiny." The bridge was quiet for a moment. Jake knew what Amy meant. Being part of the Council was good for humanity in the long term. Access to technology, trade routes, diplomatic protection, all valuable. But on a personal level, it meant constantly explaining themselves to species who didn't understand human nature. "I miss the days when we just flew cargo," Danny said over the comm. "Nobody questioned how fast I fixed the engines back then." "We can still do cargo runs," Jake said. "Once all this political stuff settles down." Before anyone could respond, alarms started blaring. Not the station alarms this time. The Odyssey's own emergency systems. "What now?" Linda said, pulling up her displays. "Distress signal," Greg reported. "Automated. Broadcasting on all frequencies." "Where?" Jake asked, already moving to his captain's chair. Moonbase in the Teller system, about 6 light-years from here. Greg pulled up more data. It's a council research facility. Population of 47 scientists. The message says their life support is failing. What kind of failure? Amy asked, already in doctor mode. Oxygen processing breakdown. They have maybe 8 hours of air remaining. Jake checked the star charts. Teller system. That's in council space. They have emergency response teams. Nearest council ship is 12 hours away, Linda said. They won't make it in time. There it was. The familiar situation, people in danger, help too far away. And the Odyssey was right here. Jake looked at his crew. They looked back at him with expressions he recognized. Determination mixed with resignation. They knew what was coming. Danny, how fast can we get there? Jake asked. If I push the engines? 5 hours. Maybe 4.5 if I really push them. Do it. Captain, Amy said quietly. We're supposed to have council authorization for emergency response now. It's part of the monitoring agreement. I know. If we go without authorization, it'll cause problems. I know that too. They sat there for a moment. This was the choice humanity had been facing since joining the council. Follow the rules and let people die, or break the rules and face consequences. To hell with it, Linda said. She was already plotting a course. People need help. That's more important than politics. Agreed, Greg said. Obviously, Danny added from engineering. Amy nodded. Patients come first, always. Jake smiled. This was why he loved his crew. They understood priorities. All right, he said. Launch procedures. But someone send a message to Council High Command. Tell them what we're doing. Try to make it sound official. On it, Linda said. The Odyssey undocked from station Kepler 442 for what felt like the 100th time. As they cleared the station, Jake saw a council observer ship moving to intercept them. We're being hailed, Linda said. Ignore it, Jake ordered. We don't have time. They jumped to faster-than-light travel before the observer ship could stop them. Behind them, the council would be filing complaints and reports. There would be meetings about this. Probably more paperwork. But 47 people would be alive who wouldn't be otherwise. The trip to the Teller system took 4 hours and 20 minutes. Danny pushed the engine so hard that Jake could feel the vibrations through the hull. By the time they arrived, the reactor was running at 170% capacity and making sounds that weren't in any maintenance manual. The moon base appeared on their screens. It was a small facility built into the side of a crater. Lights flickered weakly. Scanning for life signs, Amy said. I'm reading 47 people. Their oxygen levels are critical. Maybe 30 minutes left. Linda, get us down there, Jake ordered. The moon had almost no atmosphere and low gravity. Linda brought the Odyssey down fast, landing in a cloud of dust. Before the engines fully powered down, Jake, Greg, and Amy were already in the airlock with environmental suits and rescue equipment. They ran across the lunar surface toward the base entrance. The doors were sealed, but Greg cut through them with a plasma torch in less than 5 minutes. Council safety regulations said it should take 20 minutes. Greg didn't care about regulations right now. Inside the base was dark and cold. The life support failure had shut down heating, too. Scientists huddled in the main laboratory, wearing emergency oxygen masks that were almost empty. Earthship Odyssey, Jake announced. We're here to evacuate you. The scientists looked up in surprise. Most of them were species Jake didn't recognize. One looked like a floating brain in a jar. Another was covered in purple fur. A third had 6 arms and compound eyes. Evacuation, one of them said through a translator. But the nearest council ship is hours away. We're faster, Amy said. She was already moving among them, checking vital signs. Everyone who can walk, head to our ship now. Those who can't walk will carry. For the next 20 minutes, the Odyssey crew worked to evacuate the moon base. Jake and Greg helped scientists across the lunar surface. Amy treated those who were suffering from oxygen deprivation. Linda prepared the ship to hold 47 additional passengers. They got everyone loaded just as the base's oxygen completely failed. Through the viewing screens, Jake watched the facility's lights go dark. That was close, Danny said. Too close, Amy agreed. A few more minutes and we would have lost some of them. The scientists were crowded into every available space on the Odyssey. The mess hall, the cargo bay, some were sitting in the corridors. Danny had rigged emergency oxygen supplies throughout the ship. It wasn't comfortable, but everyone was alive and safe. Jake was on the bridge preparing to launch when Commander Thelnos' warship dropped out of faster-than-light travel nearby. "Incoming hail," Linda said. "Put it through." Thelnos appeared on the screen. His scales were rippling, and what Jake had learned was exasperation. "Captain Morrison, you do realize you violated 3 Council regulations by responding to that distress call without authorization?" "Yes, sir," Jake said. "How many regulations did we violate by saving 47 lives?" "That's not the point." "That's exactly the point, Commander." Thelnos was quiet for a moment. Then his scales settled. "The Council is not happy with you, Captain. You were supposed to be on your best behavior during the monitoring period.